Awesome. And I'll sit there. I'll man the waiting room and let people in kind of as they filter in there. But appreciate you coming back and doing this. Tony did I think our first session ever, actually, like right when the business got kicked off, which was really cool. He has like the best audio video setup on the planet, I think. But he's going to be talking today about how to tune a business for profitability. He's a founder of his own company and works with a lot of bootstrap SaaS companies as well. So excited to have him on. And Tony, I'll throw things your way, man. Thank you.
Perfect, perfect. Eric, thank you so much. I am going to go ahead and share my screen. So let me see if this works out. Does that come through all right?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. All righty. Well, just want to get you guys kicked off, especially for the purpose of the recording. So Equip is the name of my business. At Equip, we teach visionaries the language of business so they can read and write the stories of their success. Um, so with that, a lot of the stuff that we like to do is educational based, hence the reason for the webinar today. But on the service side, in addition to the education side, on the service side, we primarily work with software development agencies. That's our specialty. I'm actually in the process right now of a merger with a friend of mine. So Equip's service offerings will be now covered under the new business name, which is Profit and Grow. And then we're going to be taking one step further beyond software development agencies to go towards digital agencies as a whole. So more to come on that. The team, as it stands right now, is just myself, and I've got a part-time accountant who is a rock star. Her name is Allie. And to give you guys a flavor of the type of people that we are, we're the people on Thanksgiving morning who go for runs. So this is a picture of us together. It's actually really funny because we didn't plan this ahead of time. It was I was with my family and we've got young kids and they were having a really, really rough go of it, understandably so. And I just hear out of the corner of my ear, I'm like, I hear, Tony, is that you? And I look around and there's Allie and her whole family. So we thought we would take a little picture here, get a sense for the type of people that we are. Um, so I know we got a pretty small group here, but maybe we can do a really quick share about what about you, your name, your business name, and then the industry you work in. So whoever wants to get us kicked off.
I am happy to go. Eric Harrison, Thrive. Uh, I really struggle with the industry every time I get asked this question. Maybe like startup industry, small business industry, something like that.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Cool. All right, who's next?
I'll go while I'm still on mute. My name is Melissa Hertel. My business name is Blue Dove Consulting Group, and my industry is accounting.
Woohoo! Love me some accounting. So good. And then Sam, you're in the same room. You just like yell through Eric's microphone.
Yeah, no, I can I turned my audio back on here. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, we can hear you. Perfect.
Cool. So yeah, I've been obviously living in close proximity of Eric, so I've been involved in Thrive just by virtue of the close proximity and stuff. But my day job is I work for a very small bootstrap software company. We have a website builder out there. It's open source, free to use, and then we charge for pro features. So it's team of software developers who get to nerd out and work on the product all day, and then it's just me on marketing. So yeah, bootstrapped, and that it's just me, almost no budget, speaking to a developer community, which is a new lane for me and something that I'm learning a lot about through this job. So that's kind of where a lot of my attention is these days.
I love it. I love it. And I think that will probably come up later on in our presentation today, but thanks for sharing that, Sam. I appreciate it. So on our agenda today, the thing we're going to be talking about, three categories of things we're going to talk about today is we're going to start off talking about bootstrapped budgeting. Being that we're in a bootstrappers community, it makes sense that we would talk about budgeting from a bootstrapper's perspective. Then we're going to talk about working capital. What is it? How do we calculate it? Why is it important? And then we're going to finish off talking about tuning for profitability. Now, I like to use the word tuning as opposed to maximize for profitability, because I'm actually of the mindset that sometimes when you maximize for profitability, you actually hinder the growth of your business. So it's all about finding the fine tuning for your profitability. We'll get more into that in a little bit. So to start off with, we're talking about bootstrap budgeting. In the bootstrapping community, one of the most fundamental and important concepts we talk about is the 80-20 rule. You guys, raise of hands, all familiar with the 80-20 rule, right? 20% of your efforts should get you 80% of the results. And that's the case across the board, especially we're talking about bootstrapping. It's like, we're not going to get the 100% product. We're going to get 20% of our effort to get us 80% of the product. We're going to be, we're going to be playing HR manager and probably at some point bookkeeper and, this, that, and the other. So with the 80-20 rule in mind, how can we approach budgeting from that perspective? What's the 20% effort that gets us 80% of the results? When I think about budgeting from a bootstrapper's perspective, I think about really trying to do two things, right? Number one, let's set high-level goals. Let's not get bogged down in the minutia. You and I both know that, especially on the income statement, in our QuickBooks accounts or in our any other accounting software, we can get so bogged down in so many details. We're like, how much are we going to spend in utilities? How much are we going to spend on Slack? How much are we going to spend on this, that, that, that? And before you know it, we're just so overwhelmed. So the 80-20 rule says, let's elevate ourselves to high-level goals. And then the second thing, which is way too often overlooked, is let's review actual results. If we can do those two things, that's the 20% effort that gets us 80% of the way there for what budgeting should look like in a bootstrapped organization. Okay. So when I talk about setting high-level goals, just to kind of give you a frame of reference, when you look at how the big boys do it, their income statements look like this. Like off to the left-hand side is probably a form of what a digital services-based business, probably some type of innovative services-based business is going to look like. It's going to have your revenues, your cost of sales, sales and marketing, general administrative, and then finally research and development. Now, you might not have an innovative type of business where you have to be constantly thinking about the future, but like, I mean, Sam, just giving the example that you gave about the company you're at, like in theory, that should be part of your spend is research and development at a high level, right? Innovating on the next product. So that is a high level of what it could look like for that type of business. If you're doing something more inventory related, like a physical, like a brick and mortar shop, it's probably even simpler. Revenues, cost of goods sold, sales and marketing, and general and administrative. And in some spaces, that might only be three. It might only be revenues, COGS, and SG&A, or what people would call OPEX, operating expenses. They'll just lump the sales, marketing, and general administrative together. So you can see, like at most, we're talking maybe 5 broad categories to set high-level goals for. If when we budget, we get way too granular here, you're going to get it's going to be so hard for you to review the actuals. And you might not really know up from down. So all that to say, let's set high-level goals. And Melissa, I know you're on the phone right now, but are you still on mute?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. I saw you nodding your head furiously, so I see agreement and resonance with this. I don't know if you had any addition that you would add to setting high-level goals.
Not that I can think of. I think you're pretty spot on. Most of my guys are smaller, so we only have 3. But I do have a tendency, because I'm an accountant, to go too deep for them.
Yep.
It goes a little above
Yep.
their head, but once you get the trout mouth, you've gone too far.
Right, exactly. Yes. And that's it's the beautiful thing about working with people like Melissa, working with people like me, is like we can get in the weeds. That's how we get to the 100% of the way there. But really when you're starting off and you're doing this on your own, bootstrapping, let's keep it high level. Okay. So keep things high level, number 1. Number 2, review the actuals. And the question is like, but like, did you though? Did we actually review the actuals? And you just think about it right now, right? We're recording this at the end of April. It's the last day of April. I was going to do a by show of hands, but we only have a couple of people in here. But we can still do show of hands. By show of hands, how many people reviewed their March results already? Nope, not yet. Right, right. And so, I mean, so I'm verbalizing what I'm seeing off to the side for the purpose of the recording. And that's very, I mean, that's very telling, right? Like that's pretty common where, you know, we'll go through this business and we'll never look at our actuals. And it's like we think to ourselves, we have to set a budget. I'm like, hold on a second. If we don't even have a cadence or a routine of reviewing financials, what's the point of setting a budget? Because at the end of the day, budget is just like we'd like to spend this or we'd like to move in this direction. But if we're not actually executing to that budget, who cares if we have a budget to begin with? Is kind of the point that I'm making. So again, rounding it all out for bootstrap budgeting. Number one, let's make sure we're setting high level goals, not getting bogged down too much in the minutia. I'm officially giving you permission to keep it high level. And then number two, let's review actuals. And this is just to show you, you know, me working with one of my clients, when we review our financials together in the income statement, we look at it high level, right? So even though there's 2 lines for revenues and 2 lines for cost of revenues, you can still see, broadly speaking, we're looking at what was our budget, what was our actual. And then we dive into why we have differences, right? If we have a $13,000 miss on the revenues, we're going to talk about that. If we have a $3,000 overage for general administrative, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what does that mean and like how should we now make different decisions for our business going forward. So giving you an example, visual right here of what reviewing your financials could look like. Oh, all righty. Let's talk about working capital. What is it and how would you define it? Love to hear some thoughts, some commentary on this. How would you define working capital?
Isn't it like every time I'm wrong when I say this, then when you say the actual definition, I'm like, yeah, obviously that's it. Isn't it like basically like the capital that like is in your business that like you have access to, not counting, I don't know, like I wouldn't call like if you know the $3,000 you're going to pay your employee like working capital since it's going to go to somebody. Maybe I'm wrong though. I don't know exactly.
I think you're getting in the ballpark. I think you're getting there. Sam, I'm curious to get your thoughts, your perspective.
I'm also going to venture a guess, but similar to what Eric said, I would say it's money in the bank that hasn't been committed yet to things like payroll or recurring expenses.
I think that's a you're getting, again, you're in the ballpark of what right sounds like. Melissa, I don't know if you're still on your call. If you wanted to chime in and give your thoughts, how would you define working capital? What is it?
It's usually how I describe it to my guys. It's how much, it's usually credit cards. So how many credit card payments can we make with what's left in the bank is usually how we do it. And sometimes because I work with construction and home remodelers, their credit card debt is huge. So it's that's how we use it to explain it, just because it's credit card debt versus how much money we have in our bank.
Right, right. And I think the thing I'm liking as I'm hearing you guys, all of you guys are describing it in slightly different terms, but I think you're all kind of centering around the same thing, is working capital is not just cash and bank, although cash and bank is probably a big component of working capital. There's also an interplay of how much do we owe on payroll, which might be a significant amount. There might also be some outstanding credit cards and that kind of stuff. Dan, I know you just joined. I don't want to throw you in the middle of things, but I also really want to throw you in the deep end, if that's okay. We are right now talking about working capital, and the question to the group was, how would you, in your own words, define working capital? So curious if you have any thoughts you want to offer up.
I appreciate you calling out that you're going to throw me in the deep end before you threw me in the deep end. So much appreciated. Yeah, my general approach to working capital is like, hey, take out, let's minus all of our outstanding liabilities. How much cash do we have on hand to grow the business and operate day to day? Try to keep it as simple as possible. But yeah, that's how I think about it or approach it.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. And fundamentally, I think the way that I would frame what working capital is it's what is required. It's essentially like, think about your body, right? Not a lot of us enjoy having extra fat, but we all need fat in order to live, right? We need a little bit of energy stores to get through just the day-to-day life because we're not eating constantly, you know, so there needs to be some kind of flux. So the flux between our meals is the fat, and or even just like the sugar in your bloodstream. That's like working capital. So it's whatever is required for your business to just keep operations going. And there's a couple of different ways you can actually like calculate that, like what we've talked about. You know, we're saying like your cash minus some of your liabilities. You might, even if you're an inventory heavy business, you might consider some of your inventory to also be included in this calculation as well for your working capital. So uh, broadly speaking, that's what it is. Why it's so important is because if we don't have working capital, we run into scenarios of crap, I can't make payroll, or shoot, I'm not able to pay my bills to my vendors. And you get into this really bad spiral of you can't even operate your business if you don't have sufficient working capital. So we've talked about how we define it. We talked about why it's important. If you want a little bit more detail, I've actually recorded just shy of 8 minutes video on YouTube. If you want to, you can go out to YouTube, type in my business name, ACCQUIP, Equip. And there's this little video called What is Working Capital? Part of my Bootstrap Financing 101 series that I'm putting together. And in it, I give a lot more detailed explanation of things like cash conversion cycle and how we go about calculating our working capital. So this is just going to be like a quick primer on this call. But if you want more detail, I would hop in there and just kind of mull about. But for our example today, we're going to be cooking a pot of soup called working capital. Okay. And what I'm going to give you is I want to give you a recipe card for that pot of soup. And on this recipe, we've got 5 major ingredients, which I'm going to venture guess many people are really only going to have 4 ingredients because, as you can see with this little asterisk, this third metric is really only applicable if you have an inventory-based business. Okay. So running down the list here, number 1, DSO stands for Days Sales Outstanding. In layman's terms, it's the average duration in days your typical customer is paying you. You might set net 30 payment terms, but we all know there's that one client that pays 35 days or 40 days. So your overall DSO might be 32 days, even if your net terms are net 30. Okay, so DSO, Days Sales Outstanding. Second item in our recipe card, DPO, the flip side, Days Payable Outstanding. On average, how quickly do you pay the bills that are sent to you? I get an invoice today. On average, it takes me 7 days to pay it. My DPO is 7 days. Sometimes it's 0 because I get the bill and I pay for it right that day. I swipe my credit card right away. So DPO, Days Inventory Outstanding, is number 3, DIO. This is basically how long am I holding the inventory before I sell it? Maybe it's 10 days, maybe it's 15 days. Shorter the better, in my opinion. Then TTM expenses is trailing 12 months of expenses. If you look back in the last 12 months, what was your total expenses? And the last recipe item on our recipe card is the growth rate. You know, in theory, we're all growing at some rate. Maybe it's 3%, maybe it's 10%. I mean, Sam, maybe, you know, it's a bootstrap tech startup and it's probably growing 40%, right? 40% year over year. So growth rate would be the last little recipe card item for us. I'm going to throw a couple numbers out here for you guys because we're going to walk through an actual example of it. So we're going to say, all right, in this example company, we're going to say 30 days on average is how people pay us. We typically pay our bills within 10 days. We've got inventory that from the time we get the inventory to the time we sell it is about 15 days. The last 12 months, we had $1.2 million in expenses, and we're looking at about a 10% growth rate. Those are the numbers we're going to deal with in the next slide. A lot of numbers here, a lot of little things going on here. So feel free to screenshot this, especially if you guys are watching the recording of this. Pause the video now, soak it all in, write this recipe down. I'm going to give you a simple way of thinking about what each of these sections means. Okay. Using real numbers, real terms here, 30 days plus the 15 days inventory outstanding minus 10 days payable outstanding. This little box right here is what we would call our cash conversion cycle. From end to end, how many days does our business require financing? And this sample company, 35 days is how many days we need to finance our business. Now you can see if we typically have customers who aren't paying until 40 or 45 days, that just means we have more time in our business that we have to finance, more days that we have to finance. On the flip side, if we get everything up front immediately, right away, they pay on receipt. Now we have to finance a lot less in our business, which is always preferable. You might even have negative days sales outstanding if you get paid up front. That would be great. But in this example, 35 days. The next section, we want to get to what is our estimated daily expense rate. So every day that we're open, it costs us X number of dollars. If our trailing 12 months is $1.2 million, we know there's 365 days in trailing 12 months. That's $3,288 per day, right? And then we always want to consider our growth rate in here too. If we're going to be growing at a 10% clip, we're going to multiply by 1.1. When you do all of that, you get this golden number of 126,588. That is your calculated working capital figure. That was a lot. So I'm going to pause and I'm going to let there be some comments or questions, thoughts as you guys see all that we've calculated.
Is this the formula you would use no matter like what type of business it is?
That's right. Yep. The only thing that would really change is, again, if we don't really have days inventory outstanding. So a lot of my businesses or the companies I work with, they're software development agencies. So they have no inventory. It's really just DSO and DPO. Many of them don't even really have payables. It's usually they're swiping their credit card or it's a recurring charge. So DPO is really like 0 days. So it's effectively whatever their day of sales outstanding is, essentially their cash conversion cycle.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Dan, did you have any thoughts on that?
No, your audio is incredible. One.
Well, thank you.
Visuals of the pot looks great.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is obviously in like a bootstrap startup world, I don't know, some of us are early in our growth trajectory, so growth rate is hard to project. Right. Like what would you say to like early day businesses if some of these numbers are TBD? How can you use this effectively, or what would be like a conservative approach to put yourself in a good position?
That's a really, really good question. So an alternative to this whole trailing 12 months divided by 365 times the growth rate is, instead of doing a trailing 12 months, you can look towards the bootstrap budget that we just created, and you can say, all right, I know I spent 1.2 million in the last 12 months, but based on my bootstrap budget, I'm thinking more like 1.3 million based on where I think I need to go to build the business. So you can, in lieu of a growth rate, you can use what you actually expect the next, average over the next 12 months is going to look like. I think another question maybe that was baked in there, correct me if I'm wrong here, but kind of like, how do we consider like margin of error for working capital? Do you feel like that's a fair question that you were trying to get at? kind of. Yeah. Because you're absolutely right. Like, especially for startups, there is a certain degree of like, I'm not really sure. Like, especially if you haven't even hit product market fit, like that's really hard to assess. And so what I would just say is look at this as a starting number, like, and I'm actively advising my clients on it too. Like when we're doing our cash flow forecasting together, as we look at this number, I'm like, I see this as a litmus test. If we're noticing that typically, like let's say this is the company and I'm noticing their average working capital is closer to $100,000, that's going to be like a yellow flag to me. I'll be like, you might run into some cash flow constraints in the short term because of the fact that this number, you're below our estimated amount. But maybe we want to add in an extra little buffer here. Maybe it's a 10% or 15% buffer just to be on the safe side. You don't want to do 2 to 3 times this working capital number. I think that would be overly conservative. But I think, plus or minus 10 to 15%, I think would be a pretty reasonable margin of error for this calculation. Kind of makes sense. Cool. Cool. Any other thoughts or questions on this? It's all making sense. I dig it. All righty. Let's move on to our last part. We're making great headway. Let's talk about tuning for profitability. Now, Dan, I framed the things we're going to talk about today, and one of the kind of brief overviews I gave for this section was I said, a lot of times we talk about profitability, we think about it in terms of I want to maximize profitability because like everybody wouldn't mind making a little bit more money, right? My contention with that is that sometimes maximizing for profitability is actually counterproductive to your long-term goals. So I like to frame this in terms of tuning for profitability so that you dial into exactly what you're trying to accomplish long-term, right? So when we think about growth in your business, how many of you guys feel like it's a black box versus feeling like it's a series of levers?
Can we add a third option of roller coaster?
I mean, that too. I'll put a roller coaster in here for the next iteration.
There you go. That's probably the closest analogy.
You feel like it's a roller
Which is
coaster?
kind of a combination of the two of these. It's kind of a combination of the two of these. Black box,
It
where you're
really
getting
is.
levers, you go up and down, so it's perfect.
Right. That's right. So you feel like at sometimes it's a controlled, like I know that I'm on the rails, I know what I'm doing here. Other times you're like, oh, good grief, here we go again. Basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say it's bang on.
Yeah. I gotcha. Does anybody feel like really more leaning towards like it being a black box where you're just like, I have no idea. We just grow and somehow we grow. I have no idea how it happens.
I feel more like the levers, at least for us. Like I know if I spend, for example, like 12 hours a day on like LinkedIn, how many members I would get out of that. And I know if I spent 12 hours a day in the community, like what that would do re-engagement. But I feel like, army of one, like I only have 2 hands and 24 hours in a day. So it's like pick your chicken or the egg.
I love that though. But and let me ask a follow-up question to that. Being in the position where you feel like growth is more so a series of levers and less so a black box, I mean, do you feel more in control or less in control with that paradigm?
I feel more in control. Like I could like explain to somebody how to sell Thrive, or at least explain how I sell it. Whether they could or not, I guess would be different. But yeah, I feel in control of it. I feel like there's not enough hours in the day, so you lean on the problem that has the biggest fire,
Yeah.
and then go hard on it for like 12 hours.
Right. And I think that's the thing is there comes a point in your bootstrapping journey and in your founding journey where growth is no longer, as an employee, you look at how companies grow and you're just like, I mean, especially if you're not in the sales and marketing function, it does kind of feel like a black box. Like, I don't know, we just grow, it just happens. If you're in the accounting department, like I was for a long time, it's just like, I don't know, I just calculate the numbers. Like I'm just showing them the percentage of their growth. That's all I know. The more you can start to frame your business in terms of a series of levers, it's like, oh, well, this feels way more empowering because now I know, like to your point, I know if I spend a little bit more time here or I spend a little bit more money here, I'm just going to get a different result in the end. And that's kind of what we want to talk about in tuning for profitability. We don't want to think about profitability as, again, being a black box or growth being a black box, but we really want to think about what are the levers we're pulling to bring about that profitability. So when I think about the levers in a business, right? I mean, everybody knows revenue. Revenue is not really a lever as much as it is a result. Both your revenues and your profits are a result of what you've chosen to do in your business. Really, where the levers exist are first and foremost cost of sales or COGS or some type of direct cost. I like to think about this lever as being how I control the quality of my goods and services. It's also a reflection of the efficiency of my service delivery. So, on the quality of goods and services, I can guarantee you a Rolls Royce is going to cost a lot more money to make than a Hyundai. Different product, different people involved, different process, all different types of things. Much higher quality, and so therefore much higher cost. So it's a metric on, or it's a lever on how high quality your goods and services are. But then it's also a measure of the efficiency of your service delivery. There's a reason why we say, large big box stores typically end up having more competitive pricing because they benefit from economies of scale. They have a lot more efficiency built in, so their COGS are lower. They can do bulk purchases and they can get better prices on things. So their COGS, they're much more efficient. They're going to cost a lot less. So that would be one lever: quality of service, efficiency of service delivery. The next one is sales and marketing. We talked about this earlier. I see this as an investment in your future revenues. I mean, at the end of the day, we could post a bunch, we can engage a bunch on LinkedIn, we can make YouTube videos, we can do ad campaigns, all this stuff. At the end of the day, the only reason we ever spent that money was because we have an expectation of future revenues. So that's another lever we're pulling: sales and marketing. A third one, general administrative. If we're being honest, most people call this overhead. They think of it as a cost. I think of it as another area that we get to choose to invest in our business. I think it gets a really bad rap because we can't attribute it to revenues per se. And sometimes, most of the time, it takes away from our profitability. But it is still a lever. And to the extent that we properly invest in general administrative, we're investing in the culture of our company. I mean, when was the last time you worked for a company and they didn't have a year-end party, or they didn't have some type of acknowledgement for your winter break, or they didn't have the tools that you needed to do your job in a collaborative way, or the space to be collaborative, right? You remember what that felt like? There was something that just kind of didn't quite come together as a company because they didn't choose to invest well in their culture. So general administrative costs really are investments in your culture. They're also investments in your strategic insight, right? So you work with a person like Melissa. I mean, Melissa, I'm saying this as much as an accountant as you, but we're general administrative, right? We're costs. We're investments, though, in strategic insight. We give the strategic insight that you need to make better decisions in your business. So when we spend in this way, we're investing in that way to get better ideas. We might be spending general administrative on the fractional CMO or the CTO, all things that don't directly impact our business, except for kind of just to give us some leadership direction. And then finally, I kind of mentioned it with investment in culture, but there's also a degree of quality of life at work that comes with our general administrative spend. Typically, the companies that spend well in this category, like I've got one client in particular who they have this like really, really cool space that they work in, and everybody that works there loves it. Like it does something. It just gives them a I don't know, they love the space that they're working at, their desk they're working in. They love that they can go and grab lunch and they can grab snacks at any time. Like there's a quality of life that comes with that. And you typically get better engagement and get better people when you spend well in general administrative. And then last but not least, research and development. Not an applicable category or not an applicable lever if you are not in a technologically oriented business or an innovative business. But Sam, in the space that you are in, there is a lot of research and development spend that goes in. And what we're doing is we're investing again in future revenues, but we're also establishing strategic advantages in the marketplace. If we're the first one to introduce a feature set to the market, our competitors don't even know how to do that. Maybe our name is OpenAI. Boom, first mover advantage. We can guarantee you they spent a crap ton of money in research and development before they finally launched the product. So they chose to invest and establish some strategic advantage. After all of that, so revenue's up here, and then all these series of levers, we get down to profit. Okay, let's run some scenarios. Up at the top, we have ST standing for short term, LT standing for long term, just so you guys can visualize what this means. Let's say in the short term, our objective is to maximize profitability. 99.99999% of the time, the first place we cut is sales and marketing, right? Like that's just the reality. Because it's harder to point to exactly what the return is. So we just say, we're going to cut our marketing spend. Great, good news. We stopped spending on marketing. In the short term, we are now more profitable because dollar for dollar, we have less expenses. Well, unfortunately, we've now lost presence on social media. Short term had no impact on revenue. Long term, however, we now see a decrease in revenue. And when our sales and marketing comes to an equilibrium to the long term, we now see a decrease in profitability to the long term. This is a short-sighted decision. It's not something I would advise on unless you actually wanted to shrink your business. So right here, we have like short-term thinking that ultimately compromises your long-term profitability. You say, okay, sound cool. Let's do what we can to flip the script. All right, let's spend a bunch of money in sales and marketing today so we can get more money later. So we're going to boost social media presence and we're going to generate strong inbound traffic. Love it. Great. Except for the part where we have spent a bunch of extra money in sales and marketing and we're no longer profitable this month. We're short term in the negative. As bootstrappers, we can't afford to just throw money at this, right? We have very limited capital. We don't have somebody propping us up, i.e. VCs. So what do? This is obviously not an option for us either. We can't just boost money for nothing. So instead, we come to the next iteration, which is to say, okay, I know I need to spend more in sales and marketing. Maybe I decrease in another area to offset, right? So I spend more in sales and marketing, but I spend less in G&A. The specific thing I choose to do is I eliminate my holiday pay and I consolidate my tech stack, just kind of lean things up, right? We always love talking about leaning down our expenses. Let's lean it up, eliminate holiday pay. Great. In the short term, everything's status quo, right? This is neutral, because we're thinking to ourselves, great, we're gonna get more money in the future, more revenues. Well, sure enough, we did get more revenues in the future, but something we didn't expect. COGS went up. You know why? When we eliminated holiday pay, we got a bunch of backlash from all the people who are like, what's up with this? We've been working our tails off. Why would you do that to me? I'm going to go find somewhere else that values me more. Oh, shoot. You guys all know, if you haven't heard it before, I'll say it to you right now. It is much less expensive to retain employees than it is to hire new employees. So your COGS go up. Great. Now, in the short term, you've done nothing for your profitability. In the long term, you've also done nothing for your profitability. Okay, there's got to be a way. We can still keep tuning things, right? We're gonna try to make this thing work. Last iteration. In the short term, we increase on sales and marketing. We still eliminate holiday pay, but we do it in a little bit, we do a little less sales and marketing, because we're going to invest a little bit more in R&D. We're going to develop a solution to help automate our service delivery for the future. It's not going to be ready today, but it will be in the long term. And what do you know? We do still increase our revenues. We negate the impact of people leaving, because as people have left, now the automation solutions that we've implemented, the R&D work that we've done to bolster our service delivery, has offset those lost labor costs, or those increased labor costs for hiring or whatever. So in the long term, we've finally now achieved long-term profitability. In the short term, status quo, no problems. This was I would say a few different scenarios that we would play out in terms of how we can best finagle our budget and our decisions to tune our business for profitability. That was a lot of me talking. So I'm going to stop and let there be some commentary and questions on your end.
I guess I have one question on this in terms of like advice in terms of where to put like, I guess specifically money, Tony. So like, would you recommend, I'll just give you like Thrive's example. Like if I like know how to sell this, but now I need to get better at basically being a community manager, would you suggest like investing like time, money, resources into like automating the sale so that it requires less of me, whether that's like a tool, a person, something like that? Or would you recommend like, okay, Eric's like good sales guy, like maybe it's like not better for him to get better at doing a community manager, like maybe that should be the thing that's automated or outsourced? Do you have like thoughts, I guess, on like where to put like time and money based on like people's strengths, like particularly in a company? I guess I don't have time to make the wrong decision on one of those two. I'll lose people, obviously. So.
That's a really, really great question. I think it depends on a lot of factors. And this is where I think having somebody who can be almost like a strategic advisor, somebody who can sit with you and understands the nuances of your circumstance. You know, one thought that goes through my mind is I'm like, okay, as I think about Eric's strengths, like where does he excel? What would naturally, in the short term, what would naturally be a simple place to plug Eric in? If you're like, I've got a process for sales, I'm not particularly great at it. Honestly, I could probably hire somebody else who's 70% of what I would do for half the cost. Well, then maybe that would be the right decision to get somebody else to start working business development for you, sales development rep. If, however, you're just such a rock star that like, and nobody really fully understands the product you're selling, and you're still not at that spot where it's a mature enough product, I might actually advise against hiring an SDR or BDR. Maybe you're hiring part-time, like a virtual assistant to help you book calls. So it's a much like earlier stage touch that they're doing with these leads, but they're probably not involved in later stage closing of the deals. I think it is very dependent on the circumstance for your business. So it would be hard without knowing more context. It might be hard to give advice, definitive advice.
No, that's helpful. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I was going to say something on that as well, because I think we all like struggle with these things. There's so many things to do, and it's like, how do you stay profitable? Because like, I think a big thing, especially for me, because I'm similar to Eric, is like trying to do everything. Some things are good at some that you aren't. Is I've actually found it very effective to build profitability into whatever you're going to offload off your plate. So for me, like I run an offshore staffing business with people in South Africa. We place South Africans with North American companies. I didn't have spending too much time on recruiting. So I have recruiters who work for me, and my initial recruiters worked on me on the placement fee. So if we had a successful placement, they would receive payment. And every time they did a successful payment or a successful placement, I had profitability built into that. So I knew if they did their job well, they would get paid like a comparable salary, but I would also be insulated from burning too much cash. And not everyone was open to it, but I did find people who were willing to do it in the early days, and it worked, where I didn't have to take money out of pocket. So I'm not saying the exact situation would be with you, but maybe you can bring on a virtual assistant or someone to manage your LinkedIn outreach, and they get comped for every new sign up or something like that. And at least that way you get built-in revenue or profitability, and you don't take that like urgency. And also I had them on contracts where like if it didn't work in a month or 2 months, I was not liable for anything. I just terminated the contract. And I was very transparent with that up front. But as we're all trying to bootstrap and grow these profitability, like those things you have to, one, be transparent of it, but two, you have to build in those like back doors just in case things don't go well.
That's really good. And Dan, as you were talking about that, it brought up something that we learn in the finance space. It's all just like a formula of like risk and return. And so effectively, Dan, just to kind of give words or structure to what you had just said, is in only paying when something is closed, that's a deal that's closed or a placement that's made, what you've done is you've effectively helped to limit your risk, which is really appealing for bootstrappers who are early stage. The cautionary tale behind choosing that trajectory for your sales and marketing or your client acquisition system is that time and again, a mitigation of risk or a limiting of risk always comes at a greater cost, right? So at small scale, not a big deal. You can still stay profitable. The challenge becomes at some point, in order to really scale your business, you will need to take that jump or move into a much riskier position in terms of how you are acquiring new clients. And so not at all to say, anti what you just said. I think there's a time and a place for limiting your risk exposure in the short term. But I'll give some practical numbers here. Typically, when you're working with somebody who takes on that much risk, they're probably making 20% of the revenue, right? Because they're owning all the risk, so they're going to get compensated a lot more for it. So for a closed deal, you might pay 20%. On the flip side, if you have developed a well-oiled client acquisition system, your cost per acquisition might only be 8% or 10%. At the high end, depending on what it is you're selling. It might even be lower if it's a more productized service. But if we're talking, especially like recruitment placements, or we're talking about like a high ticket offer, I mean, we see this all the time, even in the accounting space. You have dedicated people who are like, I will get you clients if you pay me whatever 20%, for the first 12 months. It's so much more expensive to do it that way. So Eric, maybe landing the plane on your question, maybe it's a mix. Maybe it's a mix of what Dan just said, where it's like, let's limit our risk, pay people only by performance. And while they're doing that, the thing you're focused on is not necessarily finding and closing new deals, but it's investing in building your system so that at the right time, you can slowly ratchet that paper performance down while you ramp up your client acquisition system.
Yeah, that's really helpful for me. Somebody actually asked me last week, like, what systems we run in the background. I was like, there's no system. Like I log on to the internet every day and
Right.
and do work. So that's helpful. Appreciate it.
That's good. More thoughts or questions? Anything that this brought up, or maybe it just reconfirmed something that you already kind of had coming into this call?
I know for me, when I went, so at some point, because being an introvert, do not like to do all the LinkedIn stuff and the content creation, all that is very draining for me. Talking to people, DMing them, sometimes getting something back that's not so nice. So for me, I actually tried a company, and Katie Thomas, who's in the accounting space, and I had her take over my LinkedIn. But when I did that, I researched her to make sure, what is her following? What is this? I also looked at some of the stuff she was doing with other clients, because it's pretty easy to see who she has if you're looking for that. And then I also set a goal. So if my revenue goal after 6 months wasn't met, and unfortunately it wasn't, I had to let them go. And as much as I loved them and it hurt, you still have to do it like that. Don't feel bad, because unfortunately it's business, but it's also their business, so they understand. So I think that's another thing, like test it out, make sure you know who you're getting, do your research, set goals for how much you're spending, because it can be very expensive. And then ultimately know that you may have to take it back over and just plan.
Amen. Amen to that. Set goals and expectations. Man, I've just seen so much wasted. So much, I would say, experiments run, but sometimes a lot of the overruns when we just don't have expectations of what we hope to get out of it. Right. I had one client, they worked with a marketing agency, which ended up being a glorified HubSpot implementation consultant for $5,000 a month. And I'm like, guys, like, where is the return on this? I'm not seeing it. Like, I don't see anything going on. All I see is that they've set up your marketing operations system, which has value at some point in the scale of your business. It's not right now. What you need is leads. What you need is deals won. Quickly thereafter, they dropped that marketing agency. Cool. Well, we kind of talked a little bit about those trade-offs that you're facing. I think with the last couple minutes we have left, I would just throw to you guys, if we're not already connected on LinkedIn, I am on there all the time. I have not been posting as much recently just because we've got a lot of moving pieces right now. And so LinkedIn has not been my priority for posting, but I still check it every day, connect with people all the time. So would love to chat with you more on LinkedIn. And this goes even for the people who are watching the recording. Hopefully people know that I don't bite. I'm a pretty kind person. I enjoy talking with people. So I'd love to talk with you guys as well. And that's all I got.
Awesome. Cool. I love your LinkedIn post, Tony. Bring them back.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess I'll pause for closing out. If there's does anyone have any questions for Tony today, or anything they'd like to talk about related to the topic?
I guess I'll ask like a general question from a finance side of it. Like, what is the biggest number, area, or whatever piece of finance that you see founders overlook and they get burned by it down the line, that us as founders or bootstrappers should be keeping a very close eye on?
Yeah, it is without fail the service businesses I support. It is always an underinvestment in sales and marketing. What they think is that they are being prudent with their money. What is actually happening is they are the reason why their pipeline is so dry. I say a rich and a full pipeline is a cure for all types of evils. And so if I were to, the reason why I talk so much about sales and marketing in my content and about how I talk with my target audience is because, just giving you some benchmarks here, the typical software development agency spends between 3 and 8% of their revenues on sales and marketing. The best performing software development agencies spend 15 to 20% of their revenues on sales and marketing, pretty much across the board. And so when I come in and I see, oh, yeah, you're spending 4% on sales and marketing, it is no surprise that you have incredible feast and famine cycles. And, I think there's something to be said too about your product-based business as well. I think there's parallels there, but certainly on the services side, I think we can too quickly dismiss sales and marketing costs as nice to have when in fact they are essential to the growth of your business. Yeah. Is that kind of scratching the itch a little bit of your question?
I'm a sales guy, so I agree.
Yeah, you get it. Out of curiosity, Dan, well, I suppose you're on the recruiting side. So your whole business is sales on both sides.
Yeah, so we're a two-sided sales. So we do offshore staffing. So we work with North American clients and we staff them with people in South Africa. So we have like a 100-person office in downtown Johannesburg. All of our employees are South African. They all work like local time zone for North American businesses. Super well educated, unbelievably skilled people, but their economy and their currency is not so strong. So you get people like 70% discount for some of these roles. So from my perspective, as you said, like sales is the blood of our organization. We don't have a product, it's a service and it's talent. So on one side of it, we have to sell to businesses of why South Africa is the right place to hire and recruit and build your team out and save costs and get really smart people. And then the other side of it is we have to work with the talent and work with them on, hey, this is an amazing opportunity, a job and a business that you can really grow your career with and get great pay. One of the two of those sides is easier to sell than the other, but yeah, you're right. There's two sides to be able to sell the service. But in our world, luckily, we're in a very win-win-win situation where North American clients get just as smart or even smarter people than North Americans for a fraction of the costs. The South Africans get access to a new job market that they don't have access to right now, where South Africa has very limited job opportunities. And we have like a mutually aligned revenue model. There's like no upfront costs. We just have like a baked in service fee every month. That's nominal compared to like the big upfront recruiting costs that most recruiting firms charge. So yeah, at the end of the day, like we're all aligned on finding really good people, but you're right. Sales is everything. If you don't have sales, the business dies.
100%. And I know I want to tack on here too. It's like a close second, but it is still in the sales and marketing area. So the first and foremost, people do not spend enough money on sales and marketing, which means they also don't spend enough time on it. The second thing is they rest on their laurels with inbound marketing. It drives me bonkers. Inbound marketing is a great scale tactic. It is a horrible go-to-market strategy for early stage. Like if you are not getting out there, if you are not doing outbound marketing when you first start off, your business will definitively fail unless you are in the magical 1% of all businesses that somehow make it with inbound marketing. So that's the other area where I say like part of your spend needs to be exploring outbound methodologies. But that's a topic for a different day.
I think another part of that too that's important, Tony, and it kind of mingles with it, is listen to your customer.
Yes.
Because I used to work in tech, and that was the one thing they were always missing. You'd get customers that were like, "This keeps breaking. This is crap," and they'd be like, "Ah." I'm like, So listen to the customer.
100%.
The piece on the outbound too, I don't know like your thoughts around this, Tony. I was talking to somebody yesterday who I'm like not a fan of stealth companies. Like I don't understand it at all. I don't think anybody wants to steal your idea or like is going to execute it that well. And I'm always like, when I like started Thrive, the first thing I want to do is like literally shout it from the freaking rooftops that like this, even like 6 months before, and the guy was like, I have a 9-month runway. We're going to come out of stealth in 5 months. I'm like, that gives you 4 months. And like, what if you're wrong on the product? What if your assumptions are wrong? What if the features of it are wrong? Like, he's like, well, I just don't want to put it out there yet. I've just never understood the stealth companies when like time is such a limited factor. It's why like even music artists say in 3 months, like the song is coming out in the state. They just want it to move fast when it hits the market.
Well, and I think what it comes down to is it's the same reason why so many of us, and sorry, I'm just going to get on my soapbox for a hot minute because I have so many thoughts about this. I think it's the same reason why so many of us choose to rest on our laurels with inbound marketing. And the reason is, at the end of the day, we are terrified of what other people think of us. We are so afraid that somebody is going to think poorly of us that we don't get ourselves out there. We don't fail in public. And, and so as a result, what we do is we just like create feel good content that we think, man, maybe it'll resonate with people. Reality, 9 times out of 10, it does not, because you don't even know who your target audience is. And we've overlooked like the most effective way is just have conversations with people and like get to know them, but like ask about their actual pain points and see if the service that you have to offer is a good fit. Because you'll be surprised at how many people are ready to buy from you if you just take that risk.
Yeah, I completely agree. It was weird how like much a difference on like our LinkedIn DM outreach, like change in attitude when I went from like lead with pitching Thrive to be like you're a business owner, you're a bootstrap. I'm like, how are you feeling? That like opened up a whole arm of like, oh, this is like a fucking roller coaster, like Dan said, and like it. Yeah, it just they almost say the pain. They almost ask about Thrive like 4 or 5 messages in, right? So I completely agree with you.
Totally.
Well, thank you for doing this, man. It was awesome. We'll send the reporting out to folks that missed it as well. And yeah, always appreciate you coming on here and doing this. You kill it as always.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks everybody for being on, and I look forward to hanging around and chatting more with you guys later.
Awesome. Thanks, Tony. Thanks, Melissa. Thanks, Sam. See you guys.
Bye now.
Bye.